over many, many years of listening, of being on people's sessions and listening to other musicians put the thing together, I felt that not that I could do it better, but I could give it a different slant because I'm coming from the point of view of as a drummer, as someone who doesn't know anything about music theory. And so I think that if we can keep that as the theme going, because that for me is what it was about. It was a theme in that sense that I picked TW's tracks and Adrian Byron Burns' track, Labi Siffre track and so on. I didn't work on these albums, but it's just another example of variety. To complete my idea, the concept I've had for many, many years of putting these different styles together. It's a personal playlist of stuff that I've liked, that I've recorded most of this stuff over the years. The guitar it's all that emotion, because it's finding the people that work with the kind of similar kind of imagination to yourself, and just say, right, just go and just do it. What do you feel? And then when they've got it, or when you feel they've got it, let them push that angle, which I think is a job of a producer. That's why producers that I respect, that's what they do. They let you wind you up and let you go, and then when you've got it, so right, that's it, or just stop there. The solo, stop that solo now. Well, that's for me is why we try to keep it as much like doing a live performance as possible. And like doing solos as you would do. It just happened that we did it at the end, but solos the way we play can appear, drum solos, bass solos can appear at any time, because one of the joys about soloing for me is not to make them too long, because there's nothing worse than boring an audience with a long bass or drum solo. Yeah, I'd walk out. Because again, with a lot of albums, people can tend to put too much on it. It can be overproduced with effects, overdubbing, doubling up 2 or 3 times. Because what I was very aware of was how to, when you came to play it live, is how to produce something very, very similar live, without worrying about, how much reverb did I have in the studio, how much effects did I have. If you put what you would normally do live, you think live in the studio rather than the other way around. Most of the sessions I've done, and I've been lucky enough that people have booked me and said, look, just come in and be you. Just play drums the way you hear the song, and play drums the way you hear it. It's every once in a while I'm told that, I want this specific, and I try and reproduce it. Sometimes I can't, because I'm the kind of player that I am. But with the guys that I work with in Station House, I've been lucky that they are such an instinctive crew that you start something and you just jam it, and very shortly it develops into something, especially if it's already set with the lyrics and the melody already set. So rhythmically you could do all sorts of things with this thing. There's no barricades of music at all. There's no restriction that it should be rock, it should be jazz, it's all of those things without any restriction whatsoever, without any barricades. Howl Into the Midnight is a really good example of fusion rock, jazz, blues, and it's so wonderfully sung by Rowena Poole. In City Blues is, again, fusion. The idea was to try and reproduce a Marvin Gaye type feel to a song, which can be done in different sections. When we did the original, it's very similar, but this, our version on this album to what we did with T.W. Henderson. because it was my idea. In City Blues is a great example, again, of fusion, of trying to create atmosphere on an album of light and shade. I think it does it really well. Texas Special is one of those that I thought, for years and years, you never had an example of a duet in blues, really, of a woman, seeing it from a woman's point of view and also seeing it from a man's point of view. So right at the end of the track, there's a banter between the husband and wife of why he keeps buying guitars and why he doesn't buy food with the guitars. So yeah, that's a really good example of it. It Wasn't Me Who Brought the Tears is a wonderful track of the lyrics are wonderful. Rowena Poole again does a wonderful job of putting emotion into the words, it's just a very emotional song, the expression expresses the emotion that I felt when I first read it and listened to the song. She managed to convey. I wish I could sing, but she managed to convey it really well. You know, it's almost classical in its makeup. You know, it does something to the back of your neck that you don't know why it's doing it, but it's doing it. Standing at the station. Right, it's a great track. Lyrically, it's a great track. But the idea behind the arrangement, it was like I was trying to reproduce a James Brown type groove. We came very close to doing it because with James Brown type grooves, funk grooves, the emphasis is on the first beat. And if you listen to Standing at the Station, there is a big bass drum sound on the first beat, not the second beat. It's that was the idea behind that, is taking that and putting, again, our interpretation of funk, or I should say my interpretation of funk. You Upset Me, Baby is a wonderful example, for me, of kind of a type of music I've enjoyed. I've always loved New Orleans Zydeco music. No, I shouldn't say always. For the last 20, 25, 30 years, I've got friends down that way who keep saying I've got to come down to New Orleans and then so. And that, for me, is a good example, or my example, or with the musicians I had of that kind of music from that part of the world. I could smell the gumbo. I'd love to walk to a very famous club down there called Tipitina's and play. That's one of my joys. So yeah, it's, and also we found out in the studio that what a very, very good fiddle stroke violin player we had in Mr. Tony Kunta. Black and White is it's such an emotional roller coaster. Really, the lyrics, which are just so strong. It just tears. Again, when the first time I heard it, it just tore my emotions apart. And wonderful thing is, the song was written by a white man, a white guy, which I've found unusual. And it's for me, it's one of the best, lyrically, one of the best songs I've ever heard. And I was so pleased to have managed to get it on the album. As you're building, the whole thing builds musically. The whole thing builds to from a very soft intro where I'm just tapping the hi-hat to, by the time you get maybe 2/3 of the way through, it's a full-on rock feel with so much energy. And again, the lyrics are so important that we keep repeating we keep because as a species we keep making the same. I don't want to go into too far, but we keep making the same mistakes. So hence kind of repeating the message, so that maybe one day it will get through. And the other thing about it is what it does to audiences. When we finish our show with this song, there's always that what I call the tumbleweed moment. People don't quite know whether they should applaud. What do I do with this? And there's a wonderful moment that there's silence, and then people react. But it's that moment when they realise that, what did I just hear? And what did I just live through? I mean, as a performer, what more can you ask for? I mean, I don't want people to sort of, really remember me for my drumming and how good or what. If someone can remember me have brought that song to the fore, I will be more than pleased, more than happy. Well, it builds emotion. It builds volume-wise. It builds emotion. It builds, I think, in every sense. As you say, it doesn't matter what colour you are, because everybody can feel this anger. Everybody can, and it may not change the world, but if I feel like someone's listened to the track, or they walk out of the venue after we've played it, and it just makes them think for a minute. What more can you ask for? Yeah, all the T.W. Henderson tracks I recorded with T.W. Henderson on an album called The Wilderness Years, probably 20 years ago. And so it was time, I thought, to rekindle, to dig them out and give them a dust off and give them a different slant. Because the thing is, with which is understandable, with T.W. Henderson, it was guitar oriented. It wasn't lyrically oriented or melodically oriented. It was very much guitar led. But whereas I decided I wanted to put the emphasis on melody and on vocals and less guitar. That was part of it, because I think these songs, the emphasis wasn't. No, I shouldn't say this really. I was going to say it wasn't in the right place. For me, they weren't. I think they were very strong songs lyrically, but I thought, get the right people to sing them and to perform them, it would do another kind of justice to them. Part of it is these wonderful people on the album who you, as a band leader, you put together and you just say, right, okay, here's a song. We decided a key, all the basics, and you say, well, look, just go, and we'll just perform it in the studio as we would do live. Because that was one of the things about this album as well, is that there's not a lot. In fact, I don't think there's any extras. There's no reverb on the voice, on the guitar, or any of the instruments. It's very dry in that sense, and it's very pure, and I like that, and that's what I wanted, without it being covered by a lot of effects. We overdubbed a couple of things because, for instance, on the recording, the original recording in France, we couldn't have Rowena with us. For family reasons, so we did her voice on the tracks when we came back to England. But everything else was as per in the studio, where I think most of the time, I think 90% of the times, it was recorded live. There wasn't any overdubs. It was recorded in Rouen. I hope I pronounced that right. But a very good friend of mine, a guy called Christophe Palissier, in Rouen, who owns his own studio. Yeah, and also he played on a couple of the tracks. One of the tracks is written by him, which we haven't done for this. But yeah, he's written a thing called Mr. Fake for this. Yeah. So it's very much of a collective I just happen to be the guy that played drums and put the musicians together. But a lot of the ideas came from the musicians who played on the album. I just felt that it's time that drummers came forward, because especially if you've had experience, and you're not restricted by, well, I don't know with other drummers, but with me, I don't know music theory, really. I know how to read drum music, but because we use the same notation, but I don't understand things about chords and things like this. So I pretty much put together what I felt in my head, or what I heard in my head, and it was with the help of the other musicians telling me whether, doing the music theory side of it, let me know whether things work or not. And if they didn't work, I wanted them to work, make them work, because this is the idea I've got, that I wanted to kind of project onto record. But yeah, it's great that drummers are given a chance to look at music from a different angle, or come at it at a recording or something like this from a different angle. Absolutely, because as I said, I don't know anything about playing guitar or playing keyboards or things like this. So you put together a bunch of guys who come the closest to what you've got in your head, your initial vision, and hope it gets fulfilled. For me, on this album, it absolutely was. It took 15, 20 years to put the musicians together, but it was worth it. Well, that's I think, to do with the fact that it's coming from a drummer's point of view, I think, because I didn't feel restricted that I needed to, if it felt that it could go in a track, because it had already been recorded, but it's strong enough to be, the rhythm can be changed, I will change it. Because I don't have that kind of restriction. You're right. I enjoy listening to reggae. I enjoy listening to Latin music. I enjoy listening to classical music, all sorts. So for me, why not incorporate all these things into the music? The theme really is Sam's ideas or Sam's dream. It may never happen again, but let's fulfill it. I fell into playing music. It wasn't a deliberate thing. Unlike a lot of my contemporaries who wanted to play in the 60s and 70s, I wasn't interested in playing music at all. I was more interested in being an engineer, which is what my parents wanted my brother and I to come over and get a profession and then go back to Jamaica. But we got into music, we got into the arts. I was lucky enough the first band I ever worked with was a band that became successful, a band called Simandi. We did some stuff in the States, we did some stuff in England. And I was lucky enough to, once Simandi stopped playing or came off the road, I was able to continue playing professionally. I was doing some session work, I did a lot of live work. And I think one of the things that stood me in good stead was the fact that I never had formal training. I never had a drum lesson in my life, so it was purely instinctive. And I was lucky enough to, the first musician I ever worked with, a bass player, I listened to him. He never taught me. He never said, play this, Sam. He just played, and I played along with him. So that's how I got into playing and listening to music in a different kind of way, in the sense of not worrying about how the drums would sound and how the drummer would play. I'm hearing a song, and I'm trying to interpret the song, which has carried me through to culminating in this album and listening to lyrics and also melodies from songs I've played on, songs I've heard. And so the album came about. I thought, well, okay, it's time to put all that knowledge and all that experience into producing an album and see how it goes. And this is No Barricades is how it came is a combination of all that. That's my word of the day, combination.